All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today I'll be doing my 2024 Vanderbilt Commodores preview and prediction. Looking at this coaching staff, Clark Leah returns for his fourth season as head coach, will also be the defensive play caller. And then the new offensive coordinator, Tim Beck, arrives from New Mexico State after 2 seasons there. Not to be confused with Tim Beck from the Coastal Carolina. He's still a head coach over there. Starting 2-0, losing the final 10 of the storyline here for Vanderbilt from last season. A promising start, pretty alarming finish. Look at the offensive side of the ball. They're looking to overcome a handful of key losses. A.J. Swan, Patrick Smith, the most notable, but also a max exodus at wide receiver is, they absolutely hammered. The top 3 pass catchers all transferred. The return of 4 starters isn't great for a team that was, last in a lot of categories in this conference, 111th nationally in yards per game. What do they bring over at quarterback, though, is pretty promising. Of course, Tim Beck with New Mexico State, bringing 2 quarterbacks with him, Blaze Burowitz, and then Diego Pavia, who's the starter for them, a nice dual-threat player who produced and improved big time. Real aggressive runner who was dynamic for them. Of course, they had a Nate Johnson from Utah. Real good runner in his own right, 6'1", 195. Seemed very limited as a passer, though. And obviously, this is a complete makeover at the quarterback position with 3 transfers. I think Pavia can certainly deliver for them. This is a guy, again, who's greatly improved for New Mexico State, a guy that was highly productive in his own right, for throwing for 2,900 yards, 26 touchdowns, or almost ran for 1,000 yards of another 7 touchdowns. So the Albuquerque native certainly delivered for the Aggies last season. He's obviously going to be the lead man here in a very similar system. At the running back position, Cedric Alexander was expected to be the main running back as a true freshman last year. Led the team on only 96 carries across 12 games. Thought Chase Gillespie will see more of a go in 2023. Had less carries than when he was a freshman, so certainly, his status seems to be a little bit up in the air in terms of future production. This is a ground game that was not very good last season, only 95 yards per contest. They lose some receiving help. Some of those guys got goes at running back as well. Well, in terms of carries, that is. A.J. Newberry had 20 carries over the final 4 games. Looked to preserve his red shirt as well. Added no transfers, and again, they lost the aforementioned Smith. So essentially the same group as a season ago, but plenty of youth and tread on the tires if they're able to get things going on the ground. Looking at wide receiver, again, they lose the best talent it had, which is really unfortunate because they had some good players. They're all plucked by pretty solid programs. Will Shepard, London Humphreys, Jaden McGowan all depart. Humphreys, he went to Georgia. Shepard, he went to Colorado. So some big talent here they lost. A lot of people wanted. Luak Funoji from Texas Tech was somewhat productive in 2022. He's going to be probably the best transfer here, 6'4", 215 pounds. Jeremiah Dillon, he's an athletic player who didn't see the field at Ole Miss. Quincy Skinner, probably going to be the best target in this offense. 200-plus yards in back-to-back seasons. He's going to be on the field a ton more. Obviously not very good production, but for this offense, I guess you'll take what you can get. Junior Sherrill, a 3-star who showed great hands as a true freshman, should be anchoring the slot. They also landed a dynamic athlete in Joseph McVay. He was a top 500 prospect, great speed, played poor competition, but he does have high upside. May need to get him involved early, and a far from deep pass catching room. We'll certainly see. I think some of these younger guys get involved. McVay, Tristan Brown, and a veteran Richie Hoskins are hoping can provide some nice attributes for them. But I think Sherrill here is going to be one of their top emerging players as a true sophomore. Look at the offensive line. They lose 2 starters. They bring in Steven Loza from Mississippi State, 6'4", 320. Has great experience, can play anywhere on the interior offensive line. Stephen Hubbard was actually a really good player for UTEP as a left tackle. Might look to pencil him in as guard, though, with the return of Gunnar Hansen, who struggled at left tackle, but he is a young player that continue to see him improve at that position. Gage Pritchford was horrible at right guard. He's in a battle with Grayson Morgan for a spot in the lineup. Mazel Sandoval, 6'6", 337, and David Siegel, presumably going to battle at right tackle, but neither have experience. They did land a new offensive line coach, Chris Lankins, hoping for better results. Collectively should be slightly better, I'd imagine, on the offensive line. Offensive verdict, I appreciate the effort of reloading at quarterback and the creativity to get 2 good runners involved, and I think they'll certainly allow this run game to free up a bit, that being Pavia and Johnson. With this passing game, they actually had some talented weapons. Now let's go back to square one. The offensive line really won't be all that different, even though there's some transfers and new faces on the staff. We'll allow them to develop there a tad bit better. An offense that only scored 17 points per game in conference play likely won't be much different for Vanderbilt. Looking at the defensive side of the ball for Vanderbilt, Clark Leah's specialty, certainly his fine print hasn't been yet implemented on this unit. 129th in scoring, 131st in yards. Certainly been a very tough stretch so far in his tenure. Lost 8 guys in the portal, also added 8. They only returned 4 starters on this side of the ball as well. Cordar Snyder was a solid player for Purdue in 22. Not as effective last year, though. The one game he played the most in against Northwestern, though, he went crazy. So I think Snyder is a pretty solid addition for them. I think a great one here. And Zaylen Wood is 6'2", 275. He's a great interior rusher for Middle Tennessee. Pretty undersized, though. Will play more defensive end, I believe, than on the interior. Devin Lee started most of last year. Didn't do much. Same goes for Yolani Atuatara. Get back veteran Christian James and sophomore Demarion Thomas. So despite losing Nate Clifton to USC, do have some solid acquisitions here and returning experience. But overall development just has to be better. His reinforcements are not on the way in terms of greater talent. Miles Cappers, Aeneas Diacosmo return off the edge. So they have some of that veteran talent. But this is a team that only generated 21 sacks. Certainly not a great number. 66 tackles for a loss. So obviously this defensive end, or this defensive line really as a whole, going to have to step up. Again, Nate Clifton was such a good player for them. Some people certainly wanted him out of the portal. Now he's gone. In the middle of the field, they returned Langston Peterson. He was one of the best players on this defense, leading them in 2 different categories. He was quite the run stopper. I certainly think that he's going to be a player that really emerges this year. 8 TFLs, 74 tackles, some great numbers there. Even had an interception at one point. Again, he was a pretty good run stopper for them. Some upside in Bryce Cowan and Prince Coley, but Kane Patterson and Ethan Barr are gone. Those guys were pretty good players in their own right. Brian Longwell played a good bit last season, but wasn't very good. So the middle of this defense is certainly, very iffy. I think, Prince Coley, he played at Notre Dame, so Clark Lee has that familiarity with him, and then Patterson are going to be the 2 guys that get to go in this scheme, which is a 4-2-5. So I certainly think, the depth isn't all that great, but I do like what they have in the starting lineup, and obviously the defensive back group. The safety group loses, a good player in Jalen Mahoney. DeRicky Wright looked like he was going to transfer, ends up staying put. That's a big-time returnee for them. Savion Riley departed. He would have, probably been, a starter this season for them. CJ Taylor, though, he's the best player on this team. He was great in all areas, mainly occupying the slot/box as a hybrid asset. Might see him in a more permanent safety role, though, this year. Brendan Fontanetti from TCU was sharp in his final game of the season. They hope that he can be good alongside Dante Carter, who's a true freshman, top 200 recruit from Texas. They'll likely, be forced into the lineup due to the lack of depth. The Commodores do return some good experience at corner, though. Martel Height was a great run defender as a true freshman. Landed a big-time transfer in, Marlon Jones from Eastern Washington. Played over 2K snaps in 4 years, was overall a very good player. Colby Taylor from Wyoming. Certainly an area with some much improved talent, and its best players are here in the secondary, I'd say. Ranked 132nd in opposing completion rating. So I would say only here they can go up, I would imagine. The Vanderbilt, obviously, it's a tough battle out here in Nashville. Obviously a greatly academic school when it comes to athletics, outside of baseball. Certainly a team that's very challenged. But I think the return of Wright and Taylor as the safeties, that's massive for them. That means that Carter probably won't have to be forced onto the field as early. They can use him in special situations. So I like the secondary, from at least some of the upside that they can provide this year. Again, the corner room is kind of thin, though. But they have some veterans in the back end that could certainly lead them improving a good bit. The verdict for this defense, they only returned 4 starters on what was a horrendous unit a season ago. I think most trust Leah has to get their unit on track will be this season here at Vanderbilt, but again, it is a tall task. They slightly get better up front with some transfers, a good bit of experience coming back. Patterson is great for them, a linebacker, and again, the secondary led by Taylor and Wright, and I think the emergence of guys like Height and the add of Jones should start to play a bit better on certain drives throughout games, but overall, we do not see a collection of impactful talent to really, meaningful uplift this defense. I definitely think they can compete a little bit better this season. That leads you to the final prediction for Vanderbilt. You can coach all you want and put in a respectable effort in recruiting, and Leah has certainly done that well despite standing on, pretty much a punctured life raft. The upgrades at quarterback should hopefully lead to some more certainty, and a few standouts on defense can be building blocks for this team. But seeing what happened this offseason at wide receiver, where your best talent's all leaving for better opportunities, this just seems like a lost cause, and development will only lead to departures, it seems, for Vanderbilt. Leah certainly has just a massive challenge on his hands, and that's going to lead you to, a 3-9 prediction. They got some freebies here against, Group of 5 and FCS schools, and even that might not be a lock for them. Obviously, last year losing to UNLV, they played Hawaii in a close game at home, so those aren't going to be locks by any means. I think they should be. I'm going to go with 3-9. No wins in conference. Just, too many hurdles to try and clear. Very interesting to see how they do against a good Virginia Tech team. It's going to feel a lot of pressure, though, in week 1 as they have some big-time expectations. So we'll see right off the bat what this team is made of. C- on both sides in terms of unit grades. And what I said about quarterbacks and the guys at safety, certainly some promising parts for Vanderbilt. But overall, this is just a team that's not going to really be able to compete much, especially in the SEC. I mean, just look at the schedule they have. It is absurd, and thankfully they get Ball State in between a brutal stretch. But I don't see them being able to capitalize this year and win any conference games. Maybe South Carolina slips up. That's literally maybe your only shot. I don't think that's going to happen though. 3-9 for me. It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.